Shalom, everybody. It is wonderful to have a guest with us. Often in the last few years, we've been blessed with having an Israeli shaliach, an emissary from Israel living in our community. But of course, among the many things that are different this year, that was not possible. But we're so glad that a solution has been found, which is Shay Rubenstein. So he's our solution. He's our Israeli shaliach. And he gets to join us from Israel. Unfortunately, he can't be here in person, but he's getting to know the Akron community. And on this week, especially a week in which we celebrate Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, Israeli Memorial Day, and Israeli Independence Day, it's wonderful to have him as a guest. So Shay, please, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us what this week has been like for you, celebrating these two Israeli very Zionist Israeli holidays during COVID.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you, Rabbi, for inviting me for this online interview. And I'm delighted to be the first ever online shaliach for the Akron Jewish community. I'm very excited to start this amazing project, and hopefully one day I'll meet you guys in person. As you may know, I used to be a shaliach in Howard County, Maryland, which is a suburb of the greater Washington community. I used to be a shaliach for 2 years. I had a great time in America. I just came back, and I'm very excited to have this opportunity to keep your community engaged to Israel and to make sure that we keep our communities engaged, and you hear about Israel from me. And thanks to my experience, I'm able to do that. So thank you again, and toda rabba. I'm a political science student. I'm 24 years old, live in Tel Aviv, Israel. Originally, I'm from Tel Aviv. So for me, being 2 years away from home in a suburban community was a bit challenging. But this week actually was very challenging for me being away from Israel, because as you know, in Israel, we have a siren, both on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and on Yom HaZikaron, Israel Remembrance Day as well. So for me, to be in Israel during the siren and to hear the siren after 3 years of being away from home was very exciting. Unfortunately, this year in Israel, there are no large memorials. However, we do mention and mark more than 23,000 soldiers who died to protect and defend the state of Israel. And therefore, this week is very important for us in Israel. Actually, this week starts with Yom HaShoah, as we mark the annual Yom HaShoah Memorial Day in Israel. Goes through Yom HaZikaron, Israel Remembrance Day, for more than 23 fallen soldiers. And tomorrow we'll celebrate our 73rd Independence Day. So it might be very, very hard to imagine how we go and move so quickly from being sad and remembering those who were not with us to celebrating and partying and barbecuing all night, right? But it is what it is in Israel, and life in Israel is a bit crazy. And therefore, we have Yom HaZikaron that reminds us that there is a price for having an independent and a strong Jewish state. And that price is, unfortunately, more than 23,000 soldiers and citizens who are not with us, unfortunately. And tomorrow will be a very special day. All my neighborhood is decorated with Israeli flags. I'm personally going to celebrate with friends, and I'm very interested in aviation. And during my time in America, I even trained as a pilot. I have a private pilot license. So tomorrow, I'm very excited for the Yom HaAtzmaut Israel Independence Day air show. So I'm planning to take some photos of the brand new fighter jets of the Israeli Air Force and some El Al and other commercial planes. So this is what I'm up for tomorrow, and I'm very excited about it.
Wonderful. We have a number of pilots in our congregation. They'll be excited to know that you share that.
Interesting. Commercial pilots or private pilots?
Both commercial and people
really?
who have a private license. Yeah. So when you get to visit here, maybe they'll take you up and you guys can fly together.
Absolutely.
So you said you're a political science major, and we know there was just an election in Israel. What's your expert opinion? Give us your thoughts on what was good in this election, what's challenging in this election, anything that worries you. about the outcomes of this election. We've had a lot of elections in Israel lately, so give us the update on this most recent one and what you think from your expert opinion. What do you think is the result for Israel, and what should we know about?
Well, first of all, I think this is a very challenging question. And even my professors can't answer that question and can predict the future, because every day in Israel, especially in Israeli politics, brings a new scandal. And I would use the Hebrew word for chaos, which is balagan, to describe what's going on in Israel. It's truly a balagan, a chaos, because this election is a political draw between the pro-Netanyahu bloc versus the anti-Netanyahu bloc. So the main issue of this election was Netanyahu yay or nay. And I was actually surprised, because I thought that COVID would have a larger impact on the result. Unfortunately, we are still in the same situation of a political draw between the pro-Netanyahu and the anti-Netanyahu political blocs. However, there are some good things happening. As a Reform congregation, I'm sure that you're very excited to have Rabbi Gilad Kariv as the first ever Reform Knesset member from the Labour Party. Actually, the Labour Party has a very good and very experienced Knesset members, including the head chairman of the party, Merav Michaeli, who is a progressive feminist leader and advocate, and I think she's doing a great job, and I'm very excited about that. There are some challenges. On the other hand, though, there is a small Jewish extremist party that made it to the Knesset past the electoral threshold. So I'm glad that there is a strong voice for the reform movement, as well as for feminist activists and liberal leaders that could balance and push to the other side. I'm also happy that Benny Gantz, who is Israel's Minister of Defense, a very experienced general, used to be the head of the army, made it for this Knesset. I think that it's important he remains the alternative prime minister. And as Minister of Defense, we didn't have a lot of issues and rockets from the Gaza Strip recently. So this is a very good and exciting thing.
That's great. No, that's really helpful. It's I know I've gotten a lot of emails about Rabbi Gilad Kariv being in the Knesset, and I know one of his pledges was to try to, much like Natan Sharansky has done over the years, to try to bring the global Jewish community closer together with Israel, and to really be an advocate for global Zionism. So I know that's exciting for us, and I think it'll help as we'll feel, hopefully, that the bridge gets stronger between diaspora Judaism and Israeli Judaism. But there's also locally here on our side of the ocean, there's a lot of talk about our new administration, and the Biden administration pretty quickly, once they were elected, started renegotiating the terms with Iran and the nuclear issues. What does it feel like from Israel? Is this a topic for discussion that Israelis are aware of, or is this more of an American political issue?
Well, this is a big issue in Israel. People talk about it, and actually, this is a controversial issue. Unfortunately, in Israel, every major issue is controversial nowadays with all the elections. Me myself, I believe that diplomacy is always better than war. So I think that it worth trying to make sure that we have a way to stop Iran. And on the other hand, though, I'm a bit concerned about Iran radical ambitious and radical moves, to challenge Israel, both from Lebanon by sponsoring Hezbollah organization, both from Syria, from East, and from South by supporting Hamas organization. As we speak now, and I think it's important to mention it, especially on Yom HaZikaron and on the eve of Yom HaAtzmaut, there are 100,000 missiles pointed at Israel. Most of these missiles were either designed, manufactured, or supplied by Iran. Iran is probably the most an immediate threat to security and the stability of Israel, as well as of the region. However, there are some good news this year. I'm very excited that thanks to the Abraham Accords, we're able to have new friends in the region, and in particular, moderate Arab countries like Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates. I think it's important that all the moderate and America's allies in the region can partner together and work with the new administration to make sure that we stop Iran and we prevent war. Now, I'm very excited about the fact that the Biden administration is very experienced, was involved in the 2015 nuclear deal, as well as the fact that there are so many American Jews involved. And I would like to mention the fact, in Israel, it made many headlines. The fact that Secretary of State Antony Blinken is his stepfather is a Holocaust survivor. I think it's very important, and I'm sure that as a son of a Holocaust survivor, he truly understands the importance of making sure that Israel remains independent, strong, and making sure that the Middle East will be a better place. So I think that comparing the 2015 versus nowadays negotiation, I think we're in a better position. Iran is a bit weaker, and Israel has new partners in the region. So that's very important.
That's a great point. I had not thought about how we, of course, heard about the new partnerships and I think celebrated them as we were. I think it's fair to say we were surprised when those new partners. I'm sure those were negotiations that were a long time coming from the inside discussions, but from an American news perspective, when we heard that there were these new partnerships among Middle Eastern countries, I think all of us were surprised a year and a half ago, and happily surprised that was those were in the works. And now I didn't think about how important that is now as negotiations start with Iran and I'm sure with in the future other countries in the Middle East, that there are stronger relationships now, stronger positive relationships between Israel and her neighboring countries. So that's a wonderful point. So last question is, we love Israeli politics. Generally, I think a lot of us love Israeli politics. We love talking about politics. We like engaging in what's going on and what decisions are being made. But the truth is, we also, we don't want to just be engaged in Israel through politics. We want to feel connected to Israel in a way that feels like an extension of our own home. And I remember years ago that at summer camp that our kids went to summer camp and they met all these Israeli shlichim like yourself, and they got excited about Israeli music and Israeli pop culture. So I don't want us to leave this conversation without you giving us a taste of what are people outside of politics. What is it that Israelis are talking about right now, excited about? What does it feel like? Of course, there's the pandemic, but what are the fun, cool things that we can look towards as we try to connect with our Israeli brothers and sisters?
Well, first of all, I highly agree with you in your point of highlighting the fact that Jewish brotherhood and our connections and bridges between us as American Jews and Israeli Jews must remain out of politics and are way stronger than the current administrations and the current debates of in our parliaments. Now, I think that the most exciting thing about Israel is the country is completely reopened. We can dine in restaurants, we can party, we can go to live music concerts, we can go to soccer and football and basketball games. I think that's very exciting after Israel had a very hard time, 3 different national lockdowns throughout less than 8 months. So people had a hard time, and now the country is almost completely reopened. And thanks to that, we are actually very excited about the fact that US citizens, as well as non-Israeli citizens, will be able to visit Israel starting next month. So all my friends, and that's the most exciting thing, to all my friends in Ohio, everybody who misses Israel or wants to meet me in Israel in person and have a coffee here in Tel Aviv, you guys are very welcome to fly in Israel, to fly to our second home starting next month. I think that's very exciting. Many people are emailing me and texting me, when can we visit Israel? So Israel is almost completely reopened and Israel is safe. And we're waiting for all of our friends and brothers and sisters on the other side of the ocean to come and visit us. And another very exciting thing in Israel, the fact that we can actually fly to our neighboring countries and our new partner in the region. That's another significant thing of the Abraham Accords. The fact that we as Israelis could fly to Dubai, we could fly to Bahrain, to Morocco. And that's very exciting because I think that when more and more countries join the peace cycle with Israel, it makes the region safe and it could help to obtain peace with different countries. So I think that comparing, on Passover, we ask Manishtana, what is different? So I allow myself to ask this question, although we're 2 weeks after Passover, and I think that a lot of things are happening in a good way. A lot of things are new, and in particular, the fact that Israel and both America are beginning to reopen, and the population is vaccinated, as well as the fact that we have new friends in the region. We can fly to different countries. And speaking of Jewish values, the fact that we have now diplomatic relationship with Morocco, which is a very important country in terms of its Jewish community history, the fact that so many Israeli Jews and American Jews who have roots in Morocco, who have history and legacy in Morocco, could visit that country without any problem. I think that's very exciting. I can tell you, although I don't have Moroccan roots, I wish I had because the food is better. But I can tell you that I'm very excited about the fact that hopefully in the upcoming months, I'll be able to travel to Morocco, and I hope to visit there soon to be impressed by this amazing Jewish community history, to see all the importance of the I would say 1,000 years of Jewish history there. So, to conclude, I think that both Israel and both America are moving toward a good direction of reopening, of celebrating Israel's independence. And it's also important to mention on Yom Ha'atzmaut that thanks to the American Jewish community, Israel was able to get support from the U.S. administration throughout the years, no matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat administration. I think that thanks to the support of the American Jewish community, we're able to have a strong and independent country, and you're able to have a second house and a direct access to the hub of global Judaism. So I think that's worth mentioning on Yom Ha'atzmaut, the fact that thanks to our partnership, thanks to our brotherhood and sisterhood, we're able to have a strong and independent Jewish state and to celebrate 73 years of that amazing country.
That's you're so right. And I did not know that Israel was open for international travel coming up in recent days. That's a wonderful, wonderful step. And it's I think a testament to how well we know Israel handled the pandemic early on and how many people got vaccinated so quickly. No surprise, as we know, Israelis and Israel tend to be incredibly innovative and able to move quickly. We've seen in world crises time and time again that Israelis are often the first ones on the scene when there's a crisis. So it's wonderful news that that Israel is safer, let's say, and reopening, and maybe we'll meet you in Morocco for lunch, and then we'll hop over to Israel. That'd be wonderful. It's
Halvai.
Yeah, it's
wish.
wonderful to have you as our guest and to get to know you. And God willing, we'll be able to meet you in person sooner than later. So thank you so much, Shay, for joining us and bringing some of Israel into our sanctuary in Akron, Ohio. And we wish you upcoming not only a wonderful Yom Ha'atzmaut as you'll celebrate tomorrow, but a Shabbat Shalom. And we really appreciate the time you're giving to our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Toda Rabba for this amazing opportunity. As I look forward for having more sessions together. So Toda Rabba and happy Yom Ha'atzmaut and Mazal Tov to our amazing country.